Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Krishna Subramanian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Captivate. We were recently acquired by Publicis, and we go to market jointly with Influential, powered by Captivate. Really excited to be here today. Casey's been a dear friend over the last decade or so, and we've got a chance to get to work together really closely. And Aaron, we've got to know more recently, and excited about our conversation today. Maybe before we get started, we'd love to just get some background on both yourselves. Maybe just going a little beyond the title itself and what you really focus on.
Sure. So I'm Casey. I have been at Unilever for 15 years, so I am a bit of a Unilever dinosaur. And I've led our brand communications function there for several years, working across paid, owned, and earned in a number of different areas, helping to drive our digital and social transformation, and many things that blow onto my desk depending on the day. And I get to work with this incredible human, Aaron, as well.
I get to work with Casey. That's the best. Aaron Sobol, really nice to see everybody here today. I'm actually completing 4 years at Unilever right now, so I feel like that's like the first degree in Unilever. But it's been an exciting couple of years. I came in overseeing U.S. media investment, which expanded to Canada and U.S., and also overseeing the data governance and strategy team, which is really awesome because there's no future of digital marketing without really close connection to a really strong data operation. And prior to that, I worked agency side, and I've always been connected to media investment.
4 years, Aaron's a newbie.
That's awesome. Well, glad for both of you to be here. Maybe before we get started, thought we could do some warm-up questions and throw them your way. Maybe we'll get started with what's one word your team would use to describe you?
Loyal.
I could put somebody on the spot right now. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Optimistic.
Right. Morning.
Concur.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning, all the way. I get grumpy at night.
I'm good all day.
All the time. What's your go-to emoji when a campaign hits KPIs?
Oh, the one that, like the megaphone that spits out the confetti. Yeah.
What is it? The spews. I don't know, probably the one that has like the triangle eyes and like a little bit of frustrated, but maybe that's excited too at the same point. We got to figure it out.
No, like hits KPIs or misses KPIs?
No, hits KPIs.
Oh, yeah.
We only hit KPIs.
We only hit
KPIs.
Miss. Yeah, we don't miss.
Yeah. If marketing were a sport, what position would you play?
Coach. I want to help people get where they need to go, but also keep them in line sometimes.
And I'm going to preface this because Unilever being a global company, I'm going to say American football. I would say offensive lineman. And I say this because it's not the first time I've thought about it, but being on the investment side, you're not necessarily the creative or leading social or the brand marketing efforts, but it really helps drive the operation down the field and gives the opportunity for those to score.
I love that. Maybe last one. What's one buzzword you wish we could retire from the industry?
Authenticity.
Oh, man. I don't even, there's a lot. We do a lot. I would just say, like, maybe we'll stop saying personalization for a little bit. I don't know. It's not that bad of a thing, but it's kind of like we've been saying it for a while. It's kind of the norm, maybe.
Yeah. Well, excited to get into the authentic answers for you and personalize the questions. But anyway, now we know who's the emoji overuser and who's killing buzzwords. Let's talk about what's really happening at Unilever right now, because this is one of the boldest marketing transformations we've seen in years. So Unilever is in a fascinating new chapter right now. So under Fernando Fernandez's leadership, the company's committed 50% of its media budget to social and plans to increase its influencer investment 20-fold. That's not just budget reallocation, that's a reimagination of what drives growth. Fernando calls it desire at scale, and it's a powerful phrase. It's about creating brands people don't just need, but what they want. Brands that spark emotion, trust, and belonging. And what's exciting is this isn't just theory, it's operationalized across markets, powered by data, creativity, and cultural and understanding. From where I sit, building technology that helps brands connect creators, culture, and commerce, this feels like a moment of convergence. The creative, the measurable, and the meaningful are finally aligning. So Casey, you've been at the heart of that evolution. Can you unpack what desire of scale really means inside Unilever?
So we make products that are used in 98% of households across the US, right? And they're generally fairly functional, right? You take a shower, you need to use something to clean your body. You wash your hair, you need something to actually moisturize. You want to style your hair, then you're going to eat something, you're going to make a sandwich, right? Very functional things. And so when you think about desire and functional, a lot of people are like, wait, how do you do that? Because desire is typically reserved for more prestige products and, say more luxury products, something that is covetable. But what we've really found is that through a number of elements across both our products, the way we go to market, how we're talking to people, we can infuse desirability at numerous touch points throughout that process of when someone is actually interacting with our brands. And we've started to think about it in that framework. So desire at scale kind of being that overarching way we look at things. But when you start to operationalize that, some of you may have heard our CMO, AC, talk about SASSY, right? And if you raise your hand if you've heard the SASSY term from Unilever. Just a few. Well, hopefully Josh, yeah. So a handful. So SASSY really is about thinking all the way through our products come to market and how we can infuse desirability. So whether it's the science, and sometimes it's hard for me on the spot to remember all of them, but the science, what's the A?
Aesthetics.
Yep. The sensorials, the second S.
Said and shared by others.
Yep. And being youthful is the Y, right? And that wasn't just a test. Thank God Aaron knew the ones. But you can think about your product packaging, the way we go to market. And specifically when we talk about creators, and that's where Krishna and I have worked together over the last several years, that endorsement, the way that people are using your product, how people get excited about the way that they're able to discover with your product is really interesting. And so we have the need to deliver on the promises and go beyond, right, in the experience. And then we're working with folks to help us even storytell around what that actually looks like in really interesting and unique ways.
That's awesome. You've spoken before about moving from culture to cart, and I think the Crumble partnership really captured that. What made that collaboration work so well, and how do you translate that cultural spark into results?
So the Crumble partnership is absolutely outstanding. It was gangbusters. Did anybody? I hope there's more hands that go up for this one. But did anybody see the Dove pink bottles? The Crumble. Okay, great. Okay, so who knows Crumble cookies? Everybody, right? Okay, so Crumble cookies are clearly taking the world by storm, definitely Gen Z by storm. My own kind of old Gen Alpha, young Gen Z is obsessed. And it was a big kind of, move and risk to say, okay, we're going to turn the white Dove bottles pink. We're going to make these scents and sensorials amazingly covetable, so much so that you think you could eat them, but the legal folks would say, Casey, you have to say they can't be eaten. And then really working together to bring that to life, it was tremendous. So you're starting with this amazing partnership that's already working with a brand that's in culture and a brand like Dove that's beloved for what it can deliver. And then when you bring that to market, we did so almost entirely driven, the marketing strategy driven by creators and thinking about creators across the funnel. So driving awareness and teasing the fact that something was coming, making people really interested and wanting to get their hands on it. And then all the way through to our partnership with Walmart, working with creators who are endemic to the Walmart audience and bringing that to life. And if anybody finds me after, I'll show you some of that content. It was incredible, but it was really thinking about all those touch points and making it something that people really were interested in. And if anybody tried it, they were amazing and they sold out. People were like, wait, I can't even get it. So it was really, really incredible marriage of beloved brand, culture fueled product, and then a match in terms of marketing that really drove a lot of interest.
So could I just add a couple things on that? Casey was saying how our products, maybe you wouldn't necessarily associate with desirability right away. But this example was something really amazing. Prior to Unilever, I had the opportunity of working on several of the Coca-Cola brands, and Sprite, a very amazing brand that is deeply rooted in hip hop culture, and also part of this is years ago, not giving anything away now. They really wanted to be embedded in the drop culture, right? So it had a Sprite act like something that you want to get in lifestyle. Well, that's what happened with our body wash, right? You could actually go on StockX and pay $80 for it at the time. So this was something that remarkable that it totally flipped expectations, but also where our product showed up and was being talked about. So when we talk about Sassy, that was a huge check on the innovation of the product, the aesthetics of it, shared and said by others, all the above. So that's sort of our freshest standard of that. But I think that's literally, when you see a body wash for $70, $80, you're like, something happened.
And another S that isn't part of Sassy is the surprise, right? That surprise and delight, the unexpected partnership, right? And I think that also really helps, right? Just bringing to life things that people might not necessarily put together, but are really intrigued by what that partnership actually can bring.
Got it. Yeah, great. I think maybe we can jump a little bit more into the Sassy framework. And Aaron, if desired scale is the destination, the roadmap feels like your Sassy framework. What I love about Sassy is that it's both analytical and creative. It's the bridge between the left brain and the right brain of marketing. And you've systematized emotional connection. How are you bringing that framework to life across paid, owned, and earned? And how do you ensure it scales without losing what makes each brand distinct?
Well, I think Sassy really applies to any individual working at Unilever based on their function and their remit. Sassy has to apply to what you need to do to contribute to the evolution and the progression, as well as our partnerships in the media landscape, as well as our agency partners. So we need to all be on board with that. But I think in the 4 years that I've been here, we've been optimizing ourselves and our partnerships and our ways of working like we optimize media, right? And yes, we want to look at data to help get the insights and optimize off that. But we are we're not sitting still, right? And our structure and ways of working has changed drastically in a year. And I think that's going to be natural when we look 12 months from now. What are we doing to make sure that we are pivoting in the right direction? From a media perspective, look how much has changed just in 3-4 years, where there's explosive growth of platforms that were not massively being consumed 3-4 years ago, right? So time is being spent differently, and we need to be able to try to immerse ourselves most effectively. From a paid perspective, that means everything from the way we plan and the way our mix needs to be to actually have the impact and resonate. And I joked about personalization before because we're really focused on being more relevant, right? Adding value, and I think that's part of the big things. So what is our content needs? What does the audience or the population expect or can get surprised by? But the storytelling, the communications has to change, whether that's paid or owned, or how we're getting influencers or affiliates to help expand that messaging. But the model has to change, and the ways of working have to change and continue to be refined to get better.
And I think so. To build on what Aaron was saying, the how we work together is so important. And I think one of the things that makes, and when Allie asked me to do this, I was like, I want to do this with Aaron because we've been talking a lot about the partnership between the disciplines. And so the structure may not dictate that you have to work together, necessarily, right? I don't sit in the same function that Aaron sits in, but the the output that we're looking for dictates, right? The actual things we're trying to achieve dictates that we need to work together. And we say, oh, yeah, well, we get that. But in reality, when I talk to folks who are in these spaces, in media, in marketing, people say to us, like, wow, the fact that you guys are working together to build the strategy at the start and not just the paid media strategy get thrown over to the team to activate creators, or the creator team be like, we want to do this, how do you amplify it? It's literally sitting down together to determine, okay, who are the audiences that we're going after? What are the types of content that we need to be able to address those audiences? Who should we be working with in our ecosystem of agencies to actually deliver on those elements? And then working together to optimize. Neither of us are walking away at either point of that process and saying, okay, now it's your problem, right? We're working together to make sure that even as we're optimizing and learning, we can bring in more content if we need to. We can shift to other opportunities and paid and partners if we need to. And it used to be several years ago, before we were on this social and digital transformation journey, that you'd almost set it and forget it. Like, and I don't know if anybody remembers this in their marketing years, but like you'd set your plan, everything would be good. And then imagine there was an opportunity that would come up, be like, oh, there's this really cool thing, Erin, there's this great partner, I have a great idea. And they're like, oh, no, but we're set. And like, that's not the case anymore. Now it's open to opportunity throughout the entire process, open to optimizing that process the entire way through. And that only works when you've got the strong collaboration between functions, between disciplines to be able to do that.
Cool. No, I think that I think that is something that it's like a blueprint for brands to really follow, right? Because I think integrating across those silos is a challenge. Maybe moving more into like just cultural relevance and measurement, and so think about the center of all of this is cultural resonance, and desire at scale only works if brands are genuinely part of culture, not just buying visibility into it. The harder question is, how do you measure that? So beyond impressions and reach, how do you know when a brand has actually entered the cultural conversation, when it's influencing what people say, not just what they see?
I'll take it back a little bit because I think where that starts is really important to determine where we go in terms of measurement. But the way that we look at the opportunity to become part of culture is around world building. And so we work with our partners at WPP and Edelman in this space to really help us define kind of where are the areas that we have the right to play with brands. Now, that's not anything new, but it really is important as we think about the value that we provide a community. And to me, that's how we start to become part of culture, because it is us talking to communities, it's us participating with and collaborating with communities that allows brands to become part of the conversation, right? You earn the right to be in those conversations. We no longer are pushing ourselves into conversations. Even sometimes I think there's lots of great work that's been done that's still us kind of, and us and industry at large, thinking we're in a community and talking with a community, but we're really talking to the community, right? So we really have to be smart about how we get to that point and think about not only, it's no longer, this one-to-one, approach to marketing. It really is many to many, and it's, for us, it's communities to communities. So to your point on how do you measure, it's not easy and it's really difficult, but there are elements where you definitely know when your brand is starting to be talked about organically, right? In the communities that you are trying to, influence and be part of. And so, for example, we have a big World Cup partnership. Clearly, the teams are in the depths of that planning and bringing that to life right now. And so we don't know exactly where that's going to go. But so much of that work is to ensure that our brands are showing up in a relevant way within the sports communities with soccer fans. And then hopefully we'll be able to see that then the brands are starting to become part of the conversation surrounding those elements.
Yeah, I would just say, to build on that, we look at short-term and long-term, right? And of course, what are the business results? we all have a job to do, and there's folk, and you know, maybe my first answer, but like, what is like a thing that's frustrating is like my job to be done, right? And a connected theme to all this is, you know, a couple years ago, everybody's like, but my job to be done is this, but my job to be done is that. We're all hired to do a job, but it all ladders back to the primary job, right? And you got to be fully connected with the mission of your leadership to deliver that. And I think that when you're all aligned on a team and you play towards the same objectives and you're in sync, you will deliver, you know, more likely better results. From a measurement standpoint, that is key. The whole, as an industry, we've evolved to saying, like, how do we look at outcomes? If my boss was sharing the stage with me right now, he'd say, we want to be the most outcomes-oriented marketer in the world. And absolutely, right? If we have a stretchy goal, we want to hit it. We want to over-deliver that. But we don't want to just be successful for 12 months. We want to be successful for the next 100 years, right? Unilever has brands that go back a long time. And that's a privilege for us to work on and carry that tradition, but we need to build it. So looking at short-term and speed and be able to pivot, maybe agility is another word. Like, yes, you need that agility to be able to pivot, but you want to keep your eye on how is your brand building. And, you know, any brand should be looking at ways to look at how their equity is growing over time. So we need to look at both and not stop looking at both.
Cool. I think that really makes sense. Maybe we can jump into just AI and human creativity. And I want to touch on innovation because Unilever's approach to AI has been super revolutionary. From the beauty AI studio to Sketch Pro and Super Shoots, you've used tech to make content creation up to 30% faster. But what's more impressive is the work still feels human. I think this is a tension everyone in marketing teams feels right now. So how do we use AI to accelerate creativity without losing, your favorite word, authenticity? But how are you seeing AI as a creative enabler rather than a replacement? And how does it support your mission of scaling desire while maintaining brand integrity?
I'll start with the integrity part. A brand needs to know what it stands for and what its values are, full stop, in anything that it does. And working with and employing AI is absolutely no different. And so when you have a brand like Dove, for example, that has stood for real beauty and making beauty a source of confidence and not anxiety, how does a brand like that start to approach the space? Well, they can only start to approach that space because they understand their values and they know what they stand for. And you, right, we know what it stands for as well. And so Dove in particular, while doing a ton of work in this space, you know, in terms of creative with our lower funnel work, you know, driving our commerce creative, the super shoots with product, has made, you know, a commitment to not using AI as it relates to human imagery, right? Similar to how several years ago we made commitments around no retouching. And so it's the brand values still stay true, but can evolve and still adapt based on the needs of the times and the work that needs to be done based on new technology, new opportunities, and the like. So that's one example, but that's true across all of our brands. And in terms of the way that that's actually working, it's very much the things that you said. You know, how are we being more efficient with our creative? If we now, and we've gone from, you know, needing dozens of assets to hundreds and thousands of assets, you know, that AI has been integral to being able to do that work.
I guess my build is that we're in this era where that's another word that will probably come up a lot today and a lot for the rest of the year and the coming year, because it's much more pronounced in terms of the expectations of how we need to, you know, leverage the tools that are available today to drive, you know, a more effective operation. So I think that, from my perspective, is where does this tools and tech come in to actually help benefit and, you know, give back hours to more, you know, jobs that we need to focus on, and that we can't necessarily put a prompt in and deliver that, right? There's a lot of uncharted territory for us as an industry to get to these areas. I think one of, thinking about the opportunity Casey and I have to work together is over the last couple of years, how like retail media has been such a, exponential growth sector for the business. Retail media is not what it was 2 or 3 years ago. The sky's the limit, really. And social is a big aspect, and creator is a big aspect. So the fact that we've gone through years of bringing that together, it's very helpful in those conversations too. Like, how do we bridge the gap from social and creator into a retail setting? And of course, when we start deploying those, those great assets, how do we make them perform to the best of their ability? So a lot of kudos to a lot of our partners out there that are really stepping up the tech to make our targeting more accurate within our investment.
So you can see, and clearly we're talking about culture and creative as a big piece, but all of that, even from a AI perspective, when we talk about efficiency in those areas, that's helping us be better and more relevant, as we do more of that work on the upfront. So we're learning so much. There's so much more information to help us drive to a better outcome.
Yeah, I think every time we have the opportunity to do an impression, to deploy an impression, whether it's organically or paid, we want that to be accurate and really make impact. There's a lot of waste naturally, and one of the jobs to do is to figure out how, if we could, when you look back, play the tapes on a Monday morning after the weekend, how do you play the game better? If 20% of my impressions could have worked harder and more effectively, that has that, has a lot of value. And then hopefully maybe one of the outcomes that Dr. Collins is talking about is maybe it achieves some of that popularity in the right way of what you're trying to achieve, but you had to do it right. And that could be, that's the journey of the comms, which isn't overnight. I think a couple of years ago, everybody wanted lightning in a bottle. It's not that, right? It's not that at all. Yeah, you want to be able to catch and expose the messaging in more effective ways. But that's kind of like, we don't want to have waste. So I think this is where, like, hopefully one of the big benefits can come from the tech.
Making us better at all points in that creative process.
Awesome. Cool. We have a couple minutes. I don't know if there's one quick question that we have from the audience at all. If not, I've got some fun questions to keep going through.
Well, I think that's part of what we're saying is, like, everything we do, every partnership we do, we're going to learn something from that. We've been an NCAA partner for 15 plus years. We're getting much more deeper into football, the U, but we're immersing in a lot of other sports too. Our foods division is deep into college football, and but we learn from everything. Even when we do like sponsorships and rights deals, how do we improve that, or how do we make that more effective? Sometimes you could negotiate something that you end up not using, and you're like, oh, how do I use it? So I think there's a learning experience. But going back to this operational transformation over the years and the ways of working is that we need it to be truly connected with commerce. The commerce forward, social first approach. First time that's coming up today, but that is, when we stick to that approach, it means that, like, we are connected with the job to be done to move on the physical and digital shelves and deliver on those business goals. Which is kind of like the starting point of, you need to achieve that this year, but in an exciting way, right? So a partnership like that brings excitement and energizes the workstream. It's not, we're just going to have this type of, we're going to show up January to December like this. No,
right. We're not going to slap a logo.
We're going to have these tremendous moments. We're showing you we're going all in, and there's so many different ways that the partnership is going to come to life.
I think to the point on thinking about how we show up from at all points, the biggest change since the Women's World Cup was that we actually now have integrated all of our media from national through commerce with Unite, WPP Unite. And that's a huge unlock as we think about showing up in culture, because the way that people are interacting with our products at shelf or online or at an experience or with a creator needs to be much more well thought out, the opportunity be much more coordinated, and the experience for the people buying our products will be a much more seamless and make a lot more sense than maybe it did before. So that's one of the biggest unlocks, I think, from then to now. And again, to Erin's point, learning all along the way, but using that as the underpinning for us to bring this to life is a huge opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Can we get a big round of applause for both?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.